there are mountains in our way, but we climb a step every day.
Welcome everyone to the Solstice Speaker Series hosted by SGI. Tonight's event is the second of 4 speaker series that will be offered throughout the year. Topics will change with the changing of the seasons. We'd like to welcome those who are here in person, as well as those joining us through streaming. I would like to call upon Elder Lorna Standing Ready from White Bear, originally from Bebekasis First Nation, to open this evening with a prayer. But first, I'm going to fill you in on our wonderful Elder Lorna Standing Ready. So Lorna is a direct descendant of one of the negotiators of Treaty 4 and a great niece of Chief Bebekasis. Lorna has been blessed with 6 children and a grandson she and her late husband, David Acus, raised. Lorna has 23 grandchildren and 23 great-grandchildren. She is a 10-year residential school survivor and attended 3 residential schools that were managed and operated by the Anglican Church of Canada, the United Church, and the Presbyterian Church. Lorna was also a foster child in Froude, Saskatchewan. Lorna has worked in many capacities, from being a farm laborer to a research assistant for her Member of Parliament in Ottawa. She has been an avid volunteer for over 40 organizations, including John Howard Society, Regina Anti-Poverty Ministry, REACH, to name a few, as well as being a board member on different committees and organizations at the provincial and federal level. Today, Lorna is called upon to say a welcome to Treaty 4 territory and a blessing at many events. She has won many awards, from the age of 12 years in 1958 for public speaking to just recently receiving a trophy for 20 years of volunteer work from the Regina Education Action on Child Hunger, which is REACH. She graduated with a business administration degree from the University of Regina in 2000 and is a lifelong learner. She speaks of her reverent connection to the earth, how she starts every morning by going outside and facing east to pray for all my relations. What the Lakota call, me too, help me with this one here.
Lakota call, Mikaya Oyosin.
So prayers and works for justice and mercy woven together harmoniously into a profound interconnectedness. She is a national elder for the United Church of Canada, elder in residence at the University of Regina, elder for the Mayor of Regina, Knowledge Keeper for Caring Hearts, and White Bear First Nations Knowledge Keeper with the Treaty Education Alliance of Treaty 4 territory. Lorna was part of the United Church of Canada delegation to travel to Australia to immerse herself with the culture, reconciliation process, and similarities of the stolen generation in Australia and the Indian residential schools in Canada. Please welcome Lorna Standing Ready.
Good evening, Danse. It's a wonderful night, a night of storytelling. My name is Notakapetat Miomaskiki. At one time, I was ashamed to say my Indian names. Now today, and with a TRC that now passed, but still lives on, it has given me great courage, great strength, and respect for myself and where I was brought up. In the big bush on the Bebekasis Indian Reserve, named after my great uncle. Hanakachapio, in English, a skillful archer, was my kokum's father, Aro. From her, I received her verbal information of my lineage. At one time, it was not something to be talked about, but we did talk. Being in residential school, I was glad to be home for 2 months of the year. And where did I go? I went to Kokum and Mushum to learn more. But you know, life is strange. Life is wonderful, though. Embrace it. I speak on things that have an impact on me, like the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. I was so trustworthy. I was left beside the road, and I walked. But that's another story. That's why when I'm asked to speak and to say a blessing in prayer, I can say it from the bottom of my heart. Because my prayers come from my heart, come from what I've experienced in life. And the old people used to say, speak from your heart. So I don't use the written word. And I prayed to get Shamanatu. And I was given tobacco, very sacred to me. I was brought up that way. And it's nice to embrace my way, what you call culture, what you call tradition. It's my way. So with that, I will say a blessing and prayer for this wonderful evening. And in your own way, close out this world. Close your eyes. Take yourself someplace that you're close to your Lord. You're close to your God. I'm close to Geshamanatu as I see my Mushum praying in the big bush in a clearing, and I standing on an old chair, and Kokum with her arm around me and showing me that, watch Mushum. So I watched, and he put his head down slowly. He looked, before doing that, across the bush, and it seemed to me like what he saw must have been hard on the eyes, hard on the heart. So I too bowed my head, and with this I will pray for this evening. Shamanatu, Creator, Maker of heaven and earth and the universe, and all that there is therein, we give you thanks. Miigwech for the day gone by. Miigwech for this evening. Thank you for all you've given us from Mother Earth. Oh, Yeshamanatu, be with us this evening. Open up our minds, our hearts, our whole being to listen to stories this evening, to listen in a good way from the bottom of our hearts. Gishamane to bless us all spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally as we gather here this evening. And be with us. Give us that strength and the courage and the wisdom to learn these stories. Watch over us this evening and bless each and every one of us here. And bless those unseen who will be called and who know that we honor them. Oh, Geshamanadu, watch over them. Watch over each and every one of us and bless us. We thank you, Miigwech, for this gathering, a gathering full of respect and honor for those gone on in tragic ways at times, but yet have left a lesson, many lessons for us to learn, sacred lessons of life and honor. Oh, Geshamanadu, maker of all, be with us this evening and bless us as we go home with hearts full of heaviness and yet hearts full of thankfulness and respect for all life. Bless us now. This we pray. Hi, 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 hi. Amen and amen. Miigwech, Miigwech.
Thank you. Thank you, Elder, standing ready for your wise words and your prayer. And I would now like to call to the stage our host, Heather Anderson from SGI.
Let's give it up for this great evening that we're all here together. Thank you, Teresa, for inviting me to the stage, and thank you all for participating in tonight's event. We're going to be part of a very meaningful discussion here tonight, and thank you, Elder Standing Ready, for starting it off with that beautiful prayer and message for us this evening. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Heather Anderson, and I'm with SGI, and I'm very pleased to be your host for this important and impactful event that we're going to partake in together tonight. Of course, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are on Treaty 4 territory, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Cree, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, Saulteaux, and the home of the Métis. We acknowledge this land in an act of reconciliation and recognize those who have shared the land before us, those who continue to share the land, and those who will share the land in the future. We further acknowledge the harms and mistakes of our past and commit to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous nations in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. And once again, I'd like to thank you for being in attendance tonight. For those that don't know, in September 2021, the Royal Saskatchewan Museum announced a partnership with SGI and the Friends of the Royal Saskatchewan Museum on what is a 4-part series, which is the Solstice Speaker Series. So this is the second of the 4 events that you're partaking in tonight. And this Indigenous Focus Series is a year-long conversation designed to reflect the emotion, the introspection, and the change that happens each season. So of course, as we approach, a new season, we'd like to gather and have these discussions, these very important and meaningful discussions for our community. SGI Solstice Speaker Series gives a voice and a platform to these important stories that we, of course, all need to hear. The hope is to create active listening and participation with the audience through Indigenous leaders sharing their stories and teachings as a part of our steps towards truth and reconciliation. The Friends of the Royal Saskatchewan Museum is a nonprofit charitable organization that works with the RSM to provide educational opportunities and services, including funding new exhibits, programs, and environmental research, all of which are crucial to help preserve Saskatchewan's rich natural and, of course, human history for generations to come. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Chili for Children for the tea and bannock that was out in the lobby. Hopefully some of you got a chance to pick up some of that bannock. If you haven't had the opportunity yet, there will be a chance at the end of the event as well. Now, a few housekeeping notes tonight. Masks are required when you're not eating. Guests are encouraged to social distance as best you can in the auditorium space. There are sanitation stations in the auditorium and in the lobby. Washrooms are located just outside the theater entrance, and there are 2 emergency exits at the back of the theater and also one at the front of the theater, and the gathering spot is in the parking lot. Well, enough from me. Let's get the people that you really want to hear from tonight on the stage. I'd now like to ask our presenters and our speakers to take the stage. So I'd also like to introduce our guests to bring greetings if they'd like to join us on the stage as well. We have some really special people in attendance tonight, and I'll begin by introducing our first guest who will be bringing greetings this evening. 4th Vice Chief Heather Bear is a member of the Ochapowace First Nation in Saskatchewan. She was re-elected to the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations, the FSIN, this past fall. Heather has worked collectively for the betterment and advancement for all First Nations in treaty implementation. She advocates to prioritize education as a treaty right and encourages First Nations youth to become future leaders. She is committed to improving the life situations of First Nations people. Vice Chief Bear is an alumnus of the First Nations University of Canada. She's a wife, a mother of 4 children, and most recently, a grandmother. Not to mention, she has a great name. I'd now like to introduce Heather to the stage.
Good evening. First of all, I would like to acknowledge our Creator on behalf of all of us, and thank you, Elder Kitea Kichimegwich, your beautiful prayer, and is very welcomed. First of all, it gives me great pleasure to bring greetings on behalf of the FSIN, and also acknowledge our friends, our allies. I know today we have the status of women. We have Sask Parts Culture and Sports. We have our Métis Nation with us. I hope I didn't forget anyone, but most importantly, I want to acknowledge the families of our missing, the families of our murdered. And, today we come together collectively to, bring support, strength, encouragement in the days ahead. I know on behalf of the Women's Commission, they've always reminded me when we talk about the critical issues that impact our children and families to remind everyone that healing is paramount. And when it comes to the woman, we've always held integral roles in our societies, integral roles in our communities, and within our homes. And I always talk about a great table that we set. We have tables at the IF and tables at the FSIN, tables within your tribal councils. We have tables within our homes. And to me, the greatest table that we set is the one in our own homes. And today I know and I acknowledge our veterans who fought for freedom. We have the freedom now to teach the culture, the values, the customs, the good ways of our people to our grandsons. And I know through that, I really believe that revitalization and that time is now. We're not talking in the future now. We're talking about now. Those little grandchildren that we have, the ones we set the table for, our young boys, that they would, again, love, respect, honor the woman like we always have. And I'm very proud of the FSIN and the Women's Commission for including men and boys in our efforts to put an end to violence against them too. So with that, my friends, I want to acknowledge my good friends here who are going to be doing opening remarks, Dorothy Mayo, and my colleague, Vice Chief Ali Bear. I was very proud for her to come in and join us in our new executive at FSIN, and we look forward in the days ahead in putting an end to all this violence and do, as they said in our history, to live in harmony with our white brothers and sisters.
Thank you so much for that, Vice Chief Bear. I'd like to bring our second guest who will bring greetings tonight. As mentioned, this is the third Vice Chief. Ali Bear is with us this evening. Ali Bear is a newly elected to the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations. She has recently been admitted to the bar after studying at the University of Saskatchewan. Ali is the first band member at the Whitecap Dakota First Nation to become a lawyer. Vice Chief Bear advocates for Indigenous people using her legal knowledge. Her passion for Indigenous justice and systems of governance allow her to bring strong leadership while serving others. She's also the proud mother of 2 daughters. Ali.
A petu ashte tue iohana a chia pita tonkaskawi a makia peye wapahaska oyate tahawahi. I want to say good day to all of you. I acknowledge our Creator and I acknowledge everybody in the room, our elder for the opening prayer, all the leadership in the room, and especially I want to acknowledge the families, that are going through this right now with our missing and murdered Indigenous women and Two-Spirit Plus. We have a lot of work that needs to be done, and I'm happy that we're having events like this and we're creating spaces like this so that we can learn more, so that we can move forward when it comes to these 231's calls to justice from the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Inquiry that's reclaiming power in place. And that reclaiming power is what my colleague, Vice Chief Heather, has talked about, is that our women have always held leadership roles in our communities. We were always held in this high regard with authority, and our men looked to us, when it came to what we were going to do next. And this was prior to colonialism, prior to settlers coming here. This was the way that we governed ourselves traditionally. And our traditional governance systems is what we are revitalizing today, and is what we are reclaiming today, and is the spaces that we are reclaiming today. And that's why we need to continue to shine a light on what is happening, because for far too long these things have been shoved under the rug. They've been hidden and kept in the dark, and we cannot do that anymore, because that's the only way that we're going to make sure that we protect those that are coming up. I have 2 young girls. They're 6 and 7 years old, and I want to make sure that they're growing up in a society that they're safe. Because right now, I do not feel like we live in a society that is safe for me or them. Every single day, there's different things that we have to face, different barriers that we have to face, and we understand that there are higher rates of violence against Indigenous women every single day. And we need to acknowledge these truths if we want to move forward together in a good way. And I think that's what we're all here for. We're here to move forward together, and we're here to support one another. And that's what community is about. So when it comes down to it, my children are your children, and your children are my children, and we need to protect each other, and we need to look out for one another. So when we see something that's wrong, we can stand up for somebody, and that's community, and that's what we need to revitalize and implement into today so that we can take care of one another and hold space for each other. And I'm very honored and grateful to share this space with the families. And, I just recently met Brian Gallagher here, and he reminded me that I played hockey with his daughter. And that's what community is. We're always together, and we're always brought together through something. And I'm just very, very grateful for that, and for each and every single one of you. And, to be in this position that I'm in now, and to be elected when we know that, we're still up against a battle. We're still up against, a lot of hard work to come. But I'm here, and I'm hoping that I can help in any way possible. So thank you to everybody here tonight, and thank you for everybody who put this on. I'm very grateful. Padame, hi, Miigwech, Masicho, Matakoas.
Thank you so much, Ali. We'd now like to introduce our third guest to bring greetings. Dorothy Mayo is a fluent speaker of the Saulteaux, Cree, and English languages, and is a member of the Saulteaux First Nation. Her expertise is developed through a combined First Nations traditional and academic learning. Dorothy is currently Senior Director of Policy and Research at Métis Nation Saskatchewan. And on top of her Bachelor of Social Work degree, Dorothy earned her Master's in Public Administration at the University of Regina. Dorothy.
I just have to move this up. Kahkiuktatam skatnawa no humagantik puite kan tuhta ego manot ego mina aya ka umaskiuta kaya Treaty 4 territory ego mina the homeland of the Métis as well. So I just want to make sure to do that because we are connected to the land, and that's our most important connection because that's our mother, the earth. And that's all about kinship. I want to acknowledge our elder for the prayer, and also want to acknowledge my fellow women here, leadership from the Federation of Saskatchewan Indigenous Nations. And I want to also acknowledge the Gallagher families and other families that are suffering and need our support, and others that work so hard to make sure that they get the support that they need in their very difficult journey. I want to also talk about the theme of this evening, winter solstice. You know, in terms of our teachings, First Nations teachings, this is a time that we gather with family, and it's not always an easy time, not always easy as far as winter is concerned. We prepare for winter, and we gather our families. We make sure that they're safe and that they're part of the warmth that comes from the fire in our homes. And this is, I think, one of the things that I want to acknowledge is that winter is there for a reason. In our territory here, we go through this, and it's something that we have to prepare for, but also something that is part of our life, and it has a role in our lives. And I think that's one of the things that we have to remember, because once we get through the winter, we have something to celebrate the coming of the spring, which is our new year. Now, as this is a time where we also enjoy gathering for Christmas, and however way you celebrate that. I know it's about family, but it's also a very difficult time for many of our families that are missing their loved ones, that have been missing or murdered. And we want to ask that you say prayers for them, because they're going to need it. They're going to need our support to be able to get through this, another season, another time that normally is a happy time for everybody, that we get to gather and have food, share stories, do many of the things that bring joy to our hearts and to our families. So I just wanted to say that I am really pleased to bring greetings from the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan. I've been there for 3 years in my current role. And also, we in our area have the Women and Gender file and also the MMIWG. And this file is really important. I come from the province before coming to the Métis Nation, and worked with the Filu. And so when I went to the Métis Nation, I wanted this to be part of the work that we do to support our Métis families. and other survivors of this really tragic experience that we're faced with. So on behalf of President McCallum and our Minister of Gender and Equality, Minister Loretta King, I want to bring greetings as well as seasoned greetings to you and your family throughout our Mother Earth. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. Now's the time to take your seats and enjoy the program. Thank you for bringing greetings. Well, tonight's discussion is a tough topic. Missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls has touched the lives of hundreds of families and, of course, communities right across Canada. Many live with the grief of losing a loved one in this tragic way every single day, and the survivors' lives have forever been changed. The evening program will discuss the importance of understanding this form of gender-based violence, the impact on families, and the supports and programs that are available through frontline organizations. Our focus will be on family and frontline workers, but there will also be a first-hand account of the impact that this has had on one Saskatchewan family. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our panel of speakers. Joining us this evening to share their experiences and stories are Danny Carrier. Danny is the program manager for the Family Information Liaison Unit, FILU, and works with the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations, the FSIN, and Métis Nations. Now, FILU provides specialized services to families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and Danny connects with families culturally and supports them. She advocates on their behalf and helps them engage with police and justice partners. Danny, do you want to just give a quick wave? There we go. Awesome. And next up we have Dorothea Swift-Wolf. She's from the Ballantine Cree Nation. She's the mother to 8 children, 6 boys and 2 daughters, and she also has 9 grandchildren. Her extensive frontline involvement in the community began as an Indigenous resource officer with the Saskatchewan Police Service, but she is now a missing person liaison. Dorothea provides information, support, and hope to families while ensuring there is community awareness both locally and nationally on the issue of missing persons. Throughout her work and her life journey, Dorothea brings traditional values and teachings into everything she does. Thank you, Dorothea. And professionally, Brian Gallagher is also joining us tonight. Now, professionally, he's an Indigenous student advisor at Saskatchewan Polytechnic. Brian puts into action the advancement of the institution's mission to educate students and provide skilled and successful graduates. Brian is committed to educating staff and students about Indigenous culture and is known to have a constant flow of faculty and staff in his office to ask questions and counsel. But personally, he's joining us this evening because he has his own personal story to share with us this evening and his very personal connection to this subject. And he's joined by Debbie for some support here on the stage tonight. So enough from me. I'm going to join the speakers over at the set, and we're going to have a little bit of a roundtable discussion. The speakers will give some more details about who they are and their stories this evening, and then we'll go from there to have an open-ended conversation. So we will begin with remarks from Danny Carrier.
So I'd like to share a little bit of my journey and how I became part of working with the beautiful families of MMIWG. So my name is Danny Carrier, and I'm the program manager for the FILU within the government of Saskatchewan. In short, that means working with the families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. In reality, that means advocating, listening, being empathic, and seeking solutions. Our team takes directions from the families and loved ones and hopes to elicit positive change in our society. To do this work on the FILU team, it not only has to be a passion, but it has to move your soul towards action. I see the most empathic people as the ones that have endured great trauma and move forward, acknowledging their past and still having hope for a brighter future. In my 13 years with government and healthcare, I have learned the importance of empathy and vulnerability. For several years, I worked as a counselor, working with mainly First Nations families as well as others who deal with trauma, loss, and grief. While in corrections, some of my biggest life lessons I learned from offenders. I learned that systemic racism, cultural genocide, and traumatic experiences are faced in a larger scope in our Indigenous populations. One evening while I was working with a high security offender who had committed a heinous crime on an Indigenous woman, I asked him why he did it. The response I got shocked me to the core. He stated, "Because I could." That statement shocked me, turned my belief system in humanity upside down, and moved me to find solutions at the same time. Why did this man feel this way? What happened in his story that allowed him to believe that an Indigenous woman didn't matter as much? We don't know for sure how many women and children have gone missing. However, the numbers are not what matters to the families, nor does it to me. What matters to the families is action. Indigenous women are 12 times more likely to suffer violence and abuse or go missing or murdered in Canada than any other race. What is that telling us? Isn't that just reiterating what the offender said to me several years ago? According to many Indigenous beliefs and cultures, women are sacred. They are the life givers, and they hold a lot of power in culture and households. What happened? Why are we here now? And how did we get here? All of these questions society has tried to answer, but what is important is seeking solutions so we can have our mothers, daughters, sisters, aunties, cousins be sacred again. I have a 5-year-old daughter who's beautiful and an old soul in every sense of the word. She's even attended some events with me in hopes of learning something. One time, former colleague asked her to pick out a rock that she had designed. For many years, rocks have been used to mark sacred places for Indigenous people. My daughter picked out a beautiful rock with pink flowers embroidered on it that now sits on our kitchen table. As she picked up this rock and with thoughtfulness in her eyes, she said to me, "Mommy, where are they going and why? And who's taking them?" I told her, "Baby, we don't have all those questions and none of the answers." My hopes for the future of MMIWG is that we get those answers and that the justice that all of these beautiful families deserve, so that one day we can look back on this and see everlasting moving change in society. The families of MMIWG are doing the real work in bringing awareness to the forefront. The strength and courage I see every day through that lens is moving in every sense of the word. There's a great quote from Sitting Bull. The quote goes something like this: "Fate whispers to the warrior, 'You cannot withstand the storm.' The warrior whispers back, 'I am the storm.'" Thank you, MMIWG.
Thank you so much, Danny. We'd now like to ask Dorothea Swiftfull to bring her remarks.
Good evening. Let me start by saying I'm a member of Peter Valentine Cree Nation. Thank you to the elder for the opening prayer. I am a mother of 8 and a grandmother of 14. And that's where I gather my strength from. But I've also raised probably about 50 kids that were lost to the streets and in the system. When I started my career, I started with the Saskatchewan Tribal Council, and I did frontline, and I worked there for 12 years. A position came up with the Saskatchewan Police Department as an Indigenous Resource Officer. That was 15 years ago. I thought, okay, the way I know to bring change is to bring it from the inside in the organization. I started working with the families of the missing, the stolen, the taken, the murdered, right off the hop, because I knew our families needed support. But then when you think of support, what is support? And when you think of community, what does that mean? When you think of support, that's my job. My job is to support hope, whatever that hope may look like at that moment in time. I've worked with families to hope that their loved ones are brought home. I work with families that hope that their loved ones are not being sold, being beaten, being hurt. I work with families that just hope that they will find remains for their loved ones to be brought home so they can lay them to rest. My job is to support that hope wherever they are in the cycle of hope. The other part of my job is to bring awareness, to have a voice, to help our families use their voice, to bring it to the media, to bring it to anybody that'll listen. So when we talk about community, we have to talk about what community means. When we do a march, or we have a candlelight vigil, or there's a media release, I want our community to take a look at it, to join us, to walk with us, to make everyone aware that these women, children, men, our missing loved ones matter. They're not a number. They're not a statistic. They are part of a family. They're part of a heart. They're part of a spirit. Now, I can't imagine walking around every waking moment of a piece of my heart missing. But this is what our families do. And it's up to us as a community to help support that hope wherever they are at that moment in time. It's time for us to stand together and support our families. Whatever they're doing, we need to support. It may be as simple as looking at a picture, a poster of the long-term missing in Saskatchewan, which is 133. You can take a look at that and be aware of that. But when our families put a call out, I am doing a vigil today, or I am walking, or I'm walking to North Balford, or across Canada, whatever that may be, stand up and support. Start using our voices. We were all gifted with the power to speak, to use our voice, whatever that may be. Start using that voice. We've heard people say it's time. You see something wrong, say something. If somebody comes to you and says, I need help, treat that person with kindness and respect and help them, whatever that may be. I've walked for 3 years to North Battleford. I'm 52 years old, and I'll continue to walk as long as I can to support the families that ask me to come, because that's what we do as a community. I think of all the families that I've worked with for the past 15 years. We have loved ones that have been missing for over 30, 40 years. We never see their pictures unless somebody Googles them and looks them up. Right? Those pictures should be at the forefront so we don't forget, because our families don't forget. They're walking around every day with this emptiness. So as a community, we can't forget. We need to use our voices. We need to stand together, and we need to bring change. A small little change, a big change, whatever you're capable of doing, but that's what we need to do. When we think of our families, what are they needing and what are they missing? Well, one is they need financial support. When you think of a cost of a poster, 10 cents may not seem like a lot, but if you're printing off 200-300 posters a day to hand out, they need support. When we're doing a search, a sandwich, water, people to come up with flashlights, with the yellow and orange vests with the reflection stuff on there. That's what they need. They need to be able to have a safe place, a platform like this, to come and share and say, I need help. But we also have to bring that awareness so we can stop it. We can't afford to have any more of our people go missing. And when I say people, I mean the Canadian nation. We need to stand up together, and we need to do it together as a community. Because if we don't, it's going to continue to happen. So if you have time, stop. Take a look at the websites, the posters. Watch Facebook for all the events that we do together as a family unit. I am part of this family. I've been part of many families. They need our support as a community. They need financial support. They need counseling support. They need support. So whatever kind of support you can give, simply by looking at the website, taking part of a march, making a donation, coming out and saying, let me give you a hug, if you accept my hug. Too many times we are asked, how are you doing? What are you supposed to say? When people ask you, how are you doing? I'm okay. But are you really okay? Right? The only counseling service currently that's free for families of the missing is run through Caring Hearts. And that's in Regina. I'm not one for video chatting with somebody when I'm exposing my hurt. And I understand a lot of it has to do with COVID, and I get that. But if you're a mainstream therapist and you're trained in ambiguous loss, they changed the title to it now because I don't know why. Put your name out there, reach out to our families, offer your service for free. Because when we have a long-term missing person, our families need to continue to work. Even if they can't, they still have to go to work, they still have bills to pay, they still have children to look after. Sometimes they're looking after the grandchildren of the loved one that's missing. I don't know how long I have left because I could talk for days when I'm given the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much. And we'll get into much more. We have lots of time to discuss this tonight. Thank you, Dorothea. And finally, we would ask Brian Gallagher to share his story with us.
I want to start off as well with an acknowledgement. It's a pleasure being here on Treaty 4 territory in the homeland of the Métis people. And I'd like to say thank you to everybody for coming, and thank you for the previous speakers. Thank you to the Elder for your beautiful prayer. And thank you to the Royal Saskatchewan Museum for putting on the Solstice speaker series. When I was asked to speak, I said, I talked it over with my wife a little bit, and we said, yes, we need to do this. And so I was sending messages back and forth asking for information. Can we get an agenda? Because I really wanted to be prepared as best as I could for it. But as we're driving, so being prepared for a few days before and driving all the way down here from Saskatoon, that kind of all goes out the window, because when you're here live and you hear other people talking about it, other thoughts come to mind. I'm here to speak about the challenges and the struggles for families, and this is just our journey. But I think it is representative of so many journeys. Our journey is only just about 15 months old, but they're, like Dorothea had said, there are journeys that have gone on for 30 years that without resolution. That journey takes a big part of your soul. People ask how you're doing, and you say, yeah, we're okay. Yeah, we're okay. We get up every morning and we do our stuff. We go to work, we go through our tasks. But I'll guarantee you there isn't a moment in the day when you don't think about the person that's missing. And this is the same experience that all of the families that Dorothea has talked about, that will be experiencing similar things. Meeting some of these families, and I'm hesitant to even start to mention the names of them because I know that I'll miss some of the names, and respectfully I can't do that. But meeting the families has been a real blessing, a real treasure, to be able to share our stories and share our situations and empathize with each other. Because that is one of the challenges, is that I don't know that there's another experience like this. We've lost all of our parents, and we come to resolution with that. We've lost friends, we've lost to cancer and other things, and you come to resolution with that. When your daughter is missing or gone or we don't know, there's no resolution for that yet. And I don't know if there ever will be. So some of our day-to-day thoughts and conversations center around this, and how do we deal with this, and what are some of the steps that we can take, and what's next? Like, what's next is a real challenging one, because you don't know what tomorrow will bring. As Dorothea said, one of her most challenging duties, I think, is she has to inform families that maybe they found maybe they'll find human remains somewhere, and that's all we'll have. But that won't be the end of it either, because then there's the legal challenges and everything that goes along with that. So losing your parents to cancer is not a nice thing at all. But and it's not, I'm trying to make comparisons, but there's just no end, there's no resolution to this. We don't get answers. And somehow, a friend of ours, Carson, he said this, doesn't matter, we still have to go on. Because we do still have to go on. We have other children. Megan has a sister. Megan is an auntie. Megan is a mom. She's a cousin. So some of the things we can call one of those treasuring moments, when I think about Megan, and Deb so eloquently pointed this out so many times, when we would have those family gatherings that Heather Bear was talking about, that Megan, we refer to as the Pied Piper of the children. As soon as Megan would walk into the door, all of the children would just swarm to her. Grandpa's not important anymore, I want to go see Megan. And they would go and visit Megan, and they would end up rolling on the floor and playing, or we should be trying to watch a Christmas story on TV, and they'd be crawling all over her asking her questions, but that's just her personality, and that's who Megan is. And I know all of the other families have stories, so we've shared some of these stories with them. When Danielle was talking about her daughter with a stone, when Megan was small, she always picked up stones. And even after, when she was older and 25, 30 years old and moved out on her own, I'd open a drawer and there were some of her treasures there, her stones. We're still finding them. We just recently moved, and I wouldn't be surprised if we open a door and find one of these treasures that Megan had. So the memories, they're cherished because we can't see her anymore. One of the most challenging, yet one of the most grateful things is driving down the road and seeing, I don't want anybody to ever have to experience this, please. Driving down the road and seeing a picture, this picture, or your picture of your daughter on a billboard. The oddest thing about that is that we would go and drive by those billboards so that we could see her. And we've talked to other families about this, and they tell us the same kind of story. There are places that they go to where they can be with their loved one. And the numbers and the stories, Dorothea, I know she doesn't want to mention statistics, but they're staggering. If you're an Indigenous woman, you're 12 times more likely to go missing or be murdered. 12 times more likely than any other person in society. If you eliminate other people of color, that number rises to, I think it's 16 or 18. I'm a math teacher by trade, so I do deal with statistics, and I talk to other people. They don't do the statistics thing, but it's the reality is that those are the numbers, and those are the numbers that are important for all citizens of Canada, North America, Turtle Island, to come to grips with. And it's as the story we were just listening to about, there's a hierarchy that exists in our society, and it's pretty strong. And when we talk about statistics, Canada or North America or other countries have recently come to terms that women are not at the top of this hierarchy. They haven't been for a long time, except in many traditional societies. There was a different balance that existed. But somebody pointed out to me just the other day, because we were talking about this, and they reminded me of something that I remembered a long time ago that at one time, the minimum wage for women was lower than it was for men. This hierarchy has existed. If you take that hierarchy and you build upon it, Indigenous women are, if you build a hierarchy, Indigenous women are at the bottom. And I think it was Danielle was telling the story where there comes a point where one sector of society is valued less, where a life becomes less important. And it is easier to take the life of a vulnerable person for some reason. And it's just so wrong. It shouldn't exist in our society or anybody's society. We're all human beings. When we acknowledge that we're on Treaty 4 and Treaty 6 territory, where I come from, on the homeland of the Métis people, we also acknowledge that we're all treaty people. That's an important piece, because for a long time people thought there were only treaty Indians, but we both share this thing. So we are all in this large community together, and we all have a responsibility to take action. Some of that action is as simple as somebody told me a long time ago, when I started working in education. Sometimes all you need to do when you walk by somebody is smile, and you might change their day. And sometimes it is that simple. So when I'm walking down the street, I'm quite inclined to smile at people, and just hopefully I can warm their day a little bit. Definitely walking down the hallways at work, working with students, smiling, it can change their day. So about the comments about building community, because yes, we're all community. We're all in this together. The solutions may be monumental when you look at the statistics, and they're overwhelming and they're staggering, but the solutions are quite simple, and it is the smallest measures. When we are having a walk or we're having a poster campaign, go and take part. We had a walk for Megan on September 19th this year, And I was overwhelmed with the number of people that came. We had Indigenous and non-Indigenous people coming and walking. And one of the ways that I asked people to come and walk was just to come and walk with us and share stories and talk. There's another important piece there, though. When you come and talk with us, talk with us. There's too much talking about us, and we need to do more talking with us. And we'll share this together as a community, as all treaty people. We will find some of the solutions. I think I'm going to stop there, and if people have questions, I would love to take them. The conversation, like I said, has to go two ways. So please, if anybody has any thoughts or comments, anything they want to bring up, be more than welcome to share that with you.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Let's start talking, about making the change. We've all kind of touched on, each of you have touched on different ways that people can get involved. There's a national campaign, public awareness campaign called I Am a Change Maker. So for those gathered here in the audience today, a lot of people maybe want to participate or they want to get involved, but they're not sure where to begin. So I know, Brian, you were just talking about some of the small steps, and it can be as simple as showing up. But what do you suggest people do to become those involved change makers and get involved with this subject kind of on a more meaningful level than just, being interested in it? Does anybody who would like to go first?
Social media.
There you go. It's sometimes as easy as
Social media is easy. Everybody, I don't know of anybody, I can't think of anybody anymore that doesn't walk around with one or two phones in their pocket. Dorothy, you got 2 phones in your pocket today? Mm-hmm. It's okay, I do too. I have a work phone and so, social media is easy. It's a great way to share things. I know that you can get scared away from it sometimes, but when I first saw Facebook, I thought, wow, this is a great way for families to share information with their children and their grandchildren. We can connect, and now we can use the technology via Zoom and via the different chats, the different video calls that we can make. Deb's always chatting with the grandchildren on Skype?
No, FaceTime.
FaceTime, okay. But yeah, there are ways that we can share our messages via social media. The technology is there for us. We just have to find ways to make use of it.
Connection has really never been easier. It is easier than ever to reach out to people and to offer your support, but I think sometimes people feel a bit reserved, or they're uncomfortable, or they're not sure if they are going to say the right thing, and so maybe that reservation prevents them from getting involved. So what would you say to those people who are struggling with getting involved in the sense that they want to, but they're just not sure how?
Can I take this one? Sorry, can I? Yes.
Go ahead.
I do want to take this one because it's exactly what you were saying. At work, when I go to my office, and I know that people they want to come and talk to me about it, but they're hesitant and they're reserved. But even if it's the simplest little conversation, there's strength in numbers and there's strength in volume. If people just come by and say hi, and even just to say, how are you doing today? And we heard about your story. And we've heard about Megan, and we just want to express our thoughts. And it doesn't seem like much, but 1 or 2 of them is a lot. 100 is more. 1,000 is even better. So your turn, Dorothea.
You took what I was going to say. I want you to stop and take a look at all the web pages that are there. There's like the Saskatchewan Association of Chief of Police. They have all current long-term missing persons in the province of Saskatchewan. There is a difference between long-term and missing. Long-term means 6 months and longer, or suspicious. So please remember that when you're looking at that. Take a look at Canada's missing. If you are going to reach out to a family on Facebook, remember to speak with kindness. Too many times I've had my families call me and say, we have this, where is, right? They usually start off where is, like Chelsea Poor Man, or bring Candace Singbell home, for example, those kinds of things. I'm sometimes appalled, and I don't use that word very often, but I am appalled sometimes when I see some of the comments that people make to our families that are hurting. Hence why I always say, before you reach out, remember to speak truthfully but kindly, because our families are hurting, and they're hurting all the time. And if you want to get involved, come out. Say, I heard you're having a walk, or I have, a flat of water. Do you need it for your walk? Right? But you have to be able to pay attention right? We need to pay attention so we can bring awareness, prevention, and support, right? I mean, I've been doing this work for a long time, and I remember the first time I tried to put together a walk. There wasn't very many of us, right? And we tried to use social media, the news, whoever, anybody, right? I even went on live talk radio. It's like, okay, I'll give it a shot, right? But if that's what I need to do to bring awareness, that's what I'll do. But I also need the support of all of you who are listening and who are here today. I need you to help me support my families, but I also need you to be aware, and I also need you to start using your voice in a good way to speak truth. And that's how you become involved. And if you have, I don't know, a flat of water, candles, whatever you'd like to bring to the families when they're holding an event, feel free to do that. We appreciate everything that our community can do for us.
I think that's such a good point, Dorothy, about, you know, putting yourself out there. Maybe at the beginning this was something that you had to really, you know, advocate for, and I'm sure on a daily basis still do. But is it getting easier? Has progress been made? What would you say, Danny? Where are we headed in this direction? Are we headed in the right direction? Are we getting to where we need to be as far as the community goes and seeing events like this where people are coming out to support them?
I think the awareness is getting out there more, but I think that I wouldn't be best to answer that question. I think it would go to the families. If the families see that there is more being done, they'll let everyone know. But in terms of awareness, I think it's coming out there a little bit more than it has been in the past. Yeah.
What are some of the biggest hurdles that you face, you know, trying to get this message out and trying to engage people? And as a family who's dealing with this on a very personal level, what kind of hurdles do you face while you're grieving, but also trying to bring awareness to the bigger issue?
Courage. Asking for help. Finding help. My wife pointed it out the first. Somebody said, "What can we do for you?" Well, we didn't have a clue. So you need to build a little bit of courage to ask people for help, to start to share your story. Courage just to get out of bed some mornings. So, yes.
I think it's important to for people to realize that families are in trauma.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that, sometimes you don't have to say anything or do anything, just be there for them, right? It's, don't be afraid to approach them and just give them a hug, right? Get involved. If you see something, say something, break the silence, right?
Yeah. That was the theme of our walk that we did for Megan this year was silence is killing us. And very appropriately, I think. There are people out there that have information that will help to resolve many of these cases. They really need to break their silence and come forward and share that information. Whatever reason they're holding on to that information, all you're doing, you're just hurting us. You're hurting all of the families. You're damaging all of society. For whatever reason you're doing it, you need to stop doing it. Bring it out and share it. Break the silence. Stop letting it kill people because it's killing more people.
I think on that point, there is an emotional heaviness attached to this subject. It can be difficult to talk about whether you're directly involved or you're somebody who's very passionate about the cause. How do you move beyond that heaviness in order to, you know, get the message out to the public? And I know that is difficult, especially if you are going through the grieving process or if you've dealt with families who are directly dealing with that process as well.
I think you gotta muster up the courage to move on through. It's one of the most worthy causes that there is, right? When I think of working with the families, I think of what would I want or need from somebody if my daughter were to go missing or murdered, right? What would I need? What would that look like? So whatever that is, I'm gonna try to do. And asking for, because every family has different needs in the situation. Every family is unique in that. So taking direction from the families is important because sometimes it's different than what you think that they might need. It's not about what we think they need, it's about what they need. And if we can help them facilitate that in any way. And we do run into roadblocks sometimes where we can't do everything that is asked, but we try our best, yeah.
Dorothea? I think part of it is open communication. I mean, part of my job is to be a bridge with the families and the police department that I currently work for. Not that I'm looking for a new job. Let's start there. But if there's offers, just kidding. Because I'm only a civil member, right? So I kind of work in a different kind of area than the investigative part. And I have to somehow build a bridge for open communication. So when I talk about I talk to our families, what do you need, right? I always talk about financial support. I know there's the Missing and Murdered Child Fund and all these other things, but there's also the legal part when somebody goes missing, right? Like you think about, if I went missing, would my husband, who's in the audience, would he have access to my bank account? Right? Would he have access to be able to pay our child care? And if I'm a grandmother, which I am, and I had my grandchildren, if my son and my daughter or somebody went missing, I need that legal advice to try to keep them in the family fold, right? Because legally I would not have standing to keep my children, my grandchildren, right, with me because I'm not their legal parent. There's other realms of missing persons, and I try to put those things in need or offer them, right? Even the Presumed Death Act. People don't think about that. If I went missing longer than 10, 15 years, right, I'd still be required my income tax, all those things. If I owned a home, the property tax, utilities, all these other things that I try to remind our families to think about. Our families need a safe place to be too, right? When you think about respite, we always think about our little people. But our families need a respite place too. They need a place to go where it's just, and when they can go for just that single moment in time to bring the balance back, right? That. So I always ask them, but there's other realms to think about. Resources. We all need resources. Our families need resources. I'm grateful for some of the organizations that step up and assist my families. I really am. I mean, you think of masks. Deb has one. Mm-hmm. You think of the bunny hugs that they're wearing, the buttons that we wear, the bead, the lapel pins that we wear. Those things don't come just because. They do cost money, right?
So financially, when you're looking to support these organizations, is it a matter of if an event is being, a local event is being held, support that and support individual causes, or is there, a bigger picture financial donation? Like where should people direct those funds if they are looking for that opportunity to give?
There we go.
Is it depend on a case-by-case basis and depending
yes.
on where your heart is and where you want to give?
Each missing person's matter is different, and every family needs are different. So you have to be aware, first of all, that it's a unique thing. Having, say you have this pot here and you're making beef stew and you're following a recipe, that soup is always going to be the same, right? Our families don't work like that. Some families may have the carrots already, and some may be needing the onions. That's the easiest way I can put it. Not that I'm a baker or a cook. You can ask my husband. I go to their house for supper. I really do. Right? So those are the things you need to think about. And simple laughter like this, right? We have to remember we all need those little moments of ha ha ha, right? Because that's what's going to keep us strong to keep walking this journey that we have to walk. And I'm walking it with them
I'm really
together.
Pardon me. I'm really glad you brought up the discussion of sitting around a table, because that was something Vice Chief Heather Bear also mentioned, is that building this community, we gather around tables, we have discussions around table, that's where community is formed, that's where family is built, whether it's eating a pot of stew or some delicious baking. Aside from that though, when you're gathered around these tables and you're gathered with family and friends, how do you broach these subjects? How do you have this conversation with those that you're gathered with?
Like our family and friends?
Whether it's your family and friends, maybe it's somebody that needs, a bit of an awakening on the subject, or somebody who is curious about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, I just ask them to do their research, but I talk to them about what's going on, why it's important, why I'm passionate about it, and talk to them about some of the things that the families struggle with or are going through as well. Yeah.
I'd say it's often situational, based on where you are, and sometimes it's easy. People will bring up the question, and sometimes it's still not even safe, because there are still a lot of people out there that will still say negative things, like Dorothea had said. Some people are still not afraid to say it to your face.
Danny, what are some of the takeaways you've had from families? You've dealt with a lot of families on this subject. What have you heard from them that you'd like to share with the people gathered here tonight?
That it's important to come out and support events, that different families have different needs. A lot of families are looking to do walks, celebrations of life, memorials, all of those, or like the shirts that we have, the bunny hugs. And like Brian had said, when he drives past the billboard, that really said something too, right? Billboards and being a part of all the events that happen is really important to the families, or what I've heard from the families that I've worked with. And just having them allowing them to tell us what they need is important as well. Because we don't always know what they need, right? And every family is at different stages in their journey as well. So, yeah.
And I think a lot of us, maybe, in the audience, you have different skills, or you have something that you can contribute that's maybe not financial, but these families could use help on a lot of different levels. Maybe it's helping plan or organize that walk if you're a communications expert, or if you have contacts in the news media, how can, I further that message by getting in contact with the people that I know. Or perhaps you're a really good graphic designer and you can offer some advice on putting together these sorts of things. So would that be useful for families? And if so, who should they reach out to? Because I know maybe it's not best to go directly to the families, but is there an organization that they can contact directly to say, hey, I have these skills and I'd like to work with families?
I would say they could reach out to either me or Dorothea or Métis Nations or families. You could reach out to basically anyone.
Yeah, women walking together.
Yeah.
Square walk.
Yeah, square walk.
We also sometimes try to ask the families to delegate a family spokesperson. So the family spokesperson has the opportunity to bring in all the information and that kind of thing, and it kind of shelters our family from the negative part of it.
And it's also because families get information from all different angles coming at them, right? And so if you have a family spokesperson, the information goes to one person, which is really helpful, right?
To bring that into kind of the next question that I have is, Brian, you mentioned it takes courage to come out and speak at events like this, especially if you are dealing with this on a personal level. What advice do you have to those who are trying to find their own voice on this subject, who have own personal stories to share?
I don't even know where you begin with that. I was tasked with one of the early announcements, and I just did it. I know other people, like Dorothea had said, some of the families have spokespersons for them because they don't have somebody that's comfortable public speaking. So if you can find a friend that will help you, if you can build yourself a community network, if you can find the people around you through the different agencies, you might find a little bit of help, little pieces at a time that you can put together. And I think it comes over time too. Our other daughter is actually quite a good public speaker, but she's very shy. And this experience is so emotional that she wouldn't talk about it. she finally had the courage to start speaking about it at an event a couple of weeks ago. So sometimes it's just an evolution, gathering your friends, gathering all of the resources that you can maybe.
Well, we certainly appreciate the courage that each of you have brought to the stage tonight to get up on front of a stage, in front of an audience, in front of TV cameras to further the message and share your story. The final question I'd like to pose to you tonight before we wrap things up is, what is your hope for the future? Or, even further to that, what's the path forward? What do you see as the path forward?
Well, I'll start with the first question. My dream is that we won't be doing this anymore.
Yeah.
That our families wouldn't have to be suffering anymore. That's what the dream is for me. Past moving forward is seeing the families that I work for and work with to be surrounded by the community support that they need, the municipal support, the provincial support, and the federal support, because that is the only way to bring change, is to stand up and say, I've had enough. And that's what I'm trying to do today.
That's what you're doing today. Brian, do you want to share your hope for the future?
Yes, that there's some balance restored to our societies. Awareness, I think, is the big key, and as an educator, it's like I said, when we talk with each other, we can find solutions if we build a stronger community right around the world, and definitely around Turtle Island and Canada and Saskatchewan for sure.
Danny?
For this all to end, just like Dorothea said, for it all to end, and for women to be respected, like wholeheartedly respected and put back in their place, right? I hope for that, and I hope that no more men go missing. I hope that there's no more domestic violence. I hope that there's no more homicide rates. I hope that our children are safe, that our youth are safe, that it just doesn't happen anymore, And therefore that would mean that we would no longer be employed, and that's okay with me as long as nobody else has to go through this anymore, because it's enough. And it doesn't seem to be slowing down, and that is what is really, really heartbreaking. It needs to end, yeah.
All right, well, thank you all for joining us tonight for this and sharing your stories publicly with the audience. Let's give our speakers a round of applause. It was very touching, and we really appreciate you guys being so vulnerable and showing the courage to share your story with us tonight. So thank you so much. We'll let you exit the stage, and we'll carry on with the second part of the program. Thank you. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to clear this stage, and we've got a really special treat for you this evening to wrap things up. Now, if you were part of the first Solstice Speaker Series, you would have remembered this is kind of the way that things took place the first time. So we have a special guest for us this evening. Kiana Francis is from the Piopop First Nation, and Kiana attends Miller High School in Regina. She's in grade 11. Kiana has been dancing for approximately 3 years, and she dances as a part of her own personal healing journey. As a way to reconnect with her culture and provide purpose for her life, she also dances to help pray for others and their healing. And tonight we are very lucky to have Kiana join us to share an uplifting dance with us. So please join me in welcoming Kiana to the stage. Hi, Kiana. So let's begin, before we get started, just tell us a little bit about the dance that you'll be performing tonight.
Well, I'm an old-style jingle dress dancer, and I am in my red dress today. I borrowed it from my mentor, Chastity Delorme. Jingle dress dancing is a healing dance, and I started dancing about 3 years ago. It was part of my healing journey and my reconnection to the culture. And I knew that it wasn't meant to just help me, but also other people, and I dance for the people now.
Well, we're so honored to have you dance for us tonight. And without further ado, let's give her a round of applause as she begins the jingle dance for us tonight.
Hey,
Brianna, for that incredible dance and for sharing your talents with us tonight. Now, as we close out the evening, I ask you all to please take a moment to reflect on what you heard tonight and the stories that were shared and the subject that was addressed. There are a couple of movements that we'd like to draw your attention to before we close out the evening. That includes Krista's Kilometers. Krista's Fox is planning a walk across Canada to raise awareness about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Krista was inspired by Ashley Moran, who went missing in July of 2018. Now, Krista will be leaving from Victoria, British Columbia in February 2022, and she hopes to complete the walk 10 months later in Newfoundland. So to support Krista's Kilometers for MMIW, you can visit her Facebook page or GoFundMe under Krista's Kilometers for MMIW. A great way to get involved if you are looking to take action. Now, another initiative that I'd like to draw your attention to tonight is the Moose Hide campaign. This campaign was started by Paul Lacerte and his daughter Raven. In 2011, they were hunting together on their traditional carrier territory, which is near the Highway of Tears in northern British Columbia. And this is where so many women, particularly Indigenous women, have gone missing or been murdered. And during that trip, they actually brought down a moose, and then they decided that its hide was going to create what is called the very first moose hide pins. And since then, this campaign has grown into a nationwide anti-violence movement. In fact, more than 2 million moose hide pins have been distributed right across Canada and across North America. There is a table in the lobby where we're handing out those moose hide pins. You can get one, and it's a great way to start a conversation, share with your friends what you heard here tonight, and a great way to spark action among those that you speak with. The official Moose Hide campaign day is February 10th, 2022, and for more information, you can go to moosehidecampaign.ca. Okay, that wraps up our second of 4 SGI Solstice series events. As I mentioned, there are another 2 coming, and we hope that you'll come and participate in those as well. Tell your friends. Of course, we'd love to see this event grow and to fill the audience with more people who are interested in this subject and other subjects as we move forward. And once again, we hope that tonight this will help inspire you and move you towards making meaningful change in your communities. As our speakers said tonight, it just takes one person to start to drive that change, and sometimes it's just a matter of asking questions and getting involved. So on behalf of everyone at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum, the Friends of the Royal Saskatchewan Museum, and SGI, my name is Heather Anderson, and thank you for joining us tonight for this very special and impactful event. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.